My name is Jessica D. Retta. I'm 30 years old, and until that night, I thought being loyal meant standing beside someone even when they forgot how much you were holding up. The bar was all polished concrete and neon accents, the kind of place where cocktails had names like Smoked Regret and cost more than a decent dinner. I hated it, but Callum loved it, and his friends Mason and Dean treated places like that as proof they were winning at life. So there I was on a Thursday night, playing my part. My part was the girlfriend, the driver, the wallet, the listener, the calm hand on the back of a man who liked looking untouchable in public. Callum was holding court, telling a story about a disastrous presentation at work. His hands moved like he was conducting applause before it happened. His laugh, which I used to find magnetic, cut brightly over the music. Mason and Dean nodded along like loyal members of a small private audience. Callum's hand landed on my forearm, fingers squeezing just a little too hard. Jess gets it, don't you, babe? You know how it is with these corporate dinosaurs. They all looked at me. My role required a line. Sounds frustrating, I said, giving his arm a soft pat. It was the correct answer. Callum beamed and went back to his drink. A ridiculous pink thing called a Paloma Promise that he had ordered because he said the name was iconic. I returned to my beer. I had heard the same story at home over takeout. I had listened, comforted him, and suggested a practical way to handle the situation next time. But practical solutions were not part of the bar version. Here, the story was about Callum being brilliant and misunderstood. That had been our life for 2 years. When he got laid off 8 months earlier, I covered rent, cooked dinners, and talked him down from panic spirals at 2 in the morning. When he finally got his new job, I celebrated like I had been hired too. We chose this very bar for his first paycheck celebration. Our spot, he had called it. I looked at him under the neon, beautiful and animated and alive, and felt the kind of fondness that had been worn thin by exhaustion. The conversation shifted to Dean's dating app disasters. Callum leaned into me and said loudly enough for the table to hear, "God, I'm so lucky I don't have to deal with that anymore." Right, babe? Then he kissed my cheek theatrically, and everyone laughed. Another round arrived. I did not order another drink because I was driving. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother Liam asking if I wanted to help rebuild the carburetor on his old Civic that weekend. A small, real warmth opened in my chest. "Absolutely," I typed. "Oh, who's that?" Callum sing-songed, reaching playfully for my phone. I moved it away by reflex. "Just Liam. Weekend plans." "Ugh, you in that greasy garage," Callum said, smiling. It was part of our routine. He mocked my motorcycle projects. I pretended to be offended. He called me his handy girl when something broke, then expected me to fix it. Then Dean, loose from his third cocktail, leaned forward with the sloppy confidence of a man about to say something profound. "You two are solid," he said, pointing between us. Like, disgustingly solid. "Callum, when are you finally going to put a ring on her?" The question hung over the table like a spotlight. I waited for Callum to blush, laugh, squeeze my hand, say something safe and sweet. 6 months earlier, on a hiking trail, he had slipped on wet gravel and I had caught him. Breathless, muddy, shaken, he had looked at me and whispered, "Don't ever let me go, okay?" I had promised I wouldn't. Now, Callum laughed. Not his bright laugh, a sharper one. "God," he said, looking into his drink instead of at me. "I hope never." Mason's smile froze. Dean blinked. Callum set his glass down with a delicate click and leaned forward, voice low, but perfectly audible. "Jess is safe. A total sweetheart. But marry her?" He made a face. "I'd rather die than be trapped in that boring little life." The world snapped into awful clarity. Our apartment. The balcony garden I built because he wanted fresh herbs. The couch where he cried after losing his job. The life I had kept steady while he called it suffocation. I smiled, finished my beer, laid cash on the table, and stood. "Jessica," Callum said, alarm flickering through his face. "Don't be sensitive. It was a joke." I walked out without looking back. The night air hit my face cold and damp, smelling like rain, exhaust, and city pavement. Behind me, the bar door swung shut over Callum's voice. I could still hear him faintly through the glass, louder now, irritated in that performative way he got when he wanted other people to believe he was the reasonable one. Oh my God. Is she seriously leaving? I did not turn around. I did not run. I walked to my car with a calm so complete it felt almost supernatural. The drive home happened in silence. No radio. No angry crying. No dramatic gripping of the steering wheel while replaying every word. My hands stayed steady at 10 and 2. I felt like someone had cut a wire in my chest and stopped a machine that had been humming for years. There was no pain yet. Pain requires attachment to what is being lost. What I felt was the sudden absence of weight. I parked in our usual spot. The word "our" slid off me without meaning. The apartment was quiet when I stepped inside, still holding the little evidence of the life I had been maintaining. His jacket over the chair, his glass in the sink. The throw blanket folded badly on his side of the couch, because he never folded anything properly unless someone was watching. I looked at none of it for long. I walked straight to the second bedroom, the space I used as an office and workshop. Callum used to call it my cave, always with a smile that made the word feel smaller than it should have. My motorcycle manuals were stacked beside engineering books. A box of spare parts sat under the desk. A framed photo of me and Liam covered in grease beside his half-rebuilt Civic hung on the wall. This room was the only place in the apartment that still felt like mine. I sat down, opened my laptop, and created a document titled Exit Strategy. The words came cleanly. Phase 1. Immediate separation. Move essential clothes, toiletries, laptop, documents, keys, and private files into the office tonight. Change passwords on banking, email, phone plan, cloud storage, and delivery accounts. Remove my card from Callum's food apps, rideshare, subscriptions, and anything else he had quietly let become my responsibility. Phase 2. Physical extraction. Book a short-term furnished studio for 1 month minimum. Budget flexible. Schedule movers for the morning. Priority items: motorcycle gear, tools, personal books, computer, documents, sentimental boxes, and anything clearly mine. Leave the couch, television, kitchen items, and curated little apartment pieces behind. I did not want relics from a life he considered a prison. Phase 3. Communication blackout. Block Callum on phone, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, and email after sending one formal logistical message. Do not argue. Do not explain. Do not accept apologies delivered as panic. Do not let his friends translate cruelty into humor. Phase 4. Legal and financial exit. Notify landlord of cohabitation breakdown. Offer to forfeit my share of the deposit or cover penalty for removal from lease. Confirm no joint debts beyond household utilities. Put everything in writing. Keep emotion out of all documentation. I worked for 2 hours. By midnight, I had booked a beige furnished studio across town available the next afternoon. By 12:40, I had scheduled movers for 9:00 a.m. By 1:00, 3 boxes were packed and labeled Jessica in black marker thick enough to look final. My phone vibrated face down on the desk again and again. Callum. Unknown number. Mason. Callum again. Probably Dean. I ignored all of it until the unknown number called a third time. Some last ghost of the woman I had been 2 hours earlier made me answer, not because I wanted to hear him, but because I wanted to close the door with my own voice. Jessica, what the hell? Callum snapped. You just left me there. You embarrassed me. His anger was sharp, but underneath it was panic. He had expected me to cry, to ask what he meant, to give him a scene he could survive by calling it a misunderstanding. I looked out the window at the dark city. My voice came out flat and peaceful. Just saving you from a fate worse than death. Then I hung up. I powered off the phone completely. The next morning, I left before Callum woke up. The movers arrived at 9. They were fast, efficient, uninterested in the emotional history of boxes. My tools, books, documents, motorcycle gear, computer, and clothes were gone in less than half an hour. I left my key on the kitchen counter beside a printed copy of the email I had sent the landlord. The studio smelled like clean linen and nothing else. It was too small, too plain, and absolutely mine for now. I set my suitcase in the corner, stood in the emptiness, and breathed. This was not home yet. It was freedom's first address. The digital storm began the second Callum realized I was not coming back to explain myself. At first, it was righteous anger. When I turned my phone on long enough to confirm the landlord had replied to my notice, his messages came in all at once like glass hitting tile. "You're overreacting." It was obviously a joke. "My friends think you're being manipulative. After everything I gave up for you, this is how you act?" I read them from the floor of my new studio, surrounded by boxes, eating noodles from a paper container with a plastic fork. The room was beige, temporary, and peaceful. His outrage felt like noise from another building. Then came Mason. "Jess, it's Mason. Callum's really upset. He didn't mean it like that. You know he gets dramatic after a few drinks." Then Dean from an unknown number. "Harsh move. He's crying." That one almost made me smile. Callum had humiliated me in front of them, but now I was supposed to comfort him because the consequences had embarrassed him back. I deleted everything and blocked each number as it appeared. By the end of the first week, his messages changed tone. "I'm worried about you. This isn't like you. Where are you staying? Please talk to me. We can fix this." He did not say, "I'm sorry I made your life sound like a prison." He did not say, "I used you." He did not say, "I wanted the safety you gave me while mocking the future that safety came from." He only wanted access, and access was over. The first month became a lesson in remembering myself. I joined the motorcycle touring club I had bookmarked 2 years earlier and never signed up for because weekends were our time, which usually meant Callum recovering from emotional weather I had not caused. On my first Sunday ride, I followed a line of bikes along the coast, the engine vibrating beneath me like a language my body had missed. Afterward, we stopped at a little roadside bar, and people talked about engines, routes, weather, bad coffee, and nothing that required me to shrink myself. I spent Saturdays with my brother Liam in his garage, helping rebuild the Civic. Our hands turned black with grease, music playing from an old speaker. No one asking me to prove my usefulness before offering me love. At one point, Liam glanced over and said, "You seem lighter." I tightened a bolt and said, "I think I put something heavy down." He nodded like that was enough. I reconnected with Paula, my oldest friend, who did not ask for every detail before showing up with wine, takeout, and a list of films she said were emotionally restorative but not stupid. I accepted a demanding work project I had previously declined because it required travel and deep focus. My boss looked genuinely surprised. "I always thought you weren't interested in that grind," she said. I wanted to tell her I had been interested. I had just been exhausted from managing another person's collapse every week. Now, with clear skies, my life expanded. At the touring club, I met a man named Soren, a quiet graphic designer who rode a vintage Triumph and knew more about carburetors than anyone with clean fingernails should. Our first conversation was about mechanics. No flirting, no pressure, just shared interest, easy laughter, and the strange relief of being spoken to without being needed. I did not think of Callum when I talked to him, or if I did, it was the way someone thinks of a scar after it stops hurting. The second month, news from my old life arrived through Lena Chen, one of Callum's former coworkers. Her email was careful, kind, and unexpected. She said she was not writing on Callum's behalf. She had heard what happened at the bar because Mason repeated his exact words during some drunken damage control, and the story had spread wider than Callum intended. People were not laughing with him anymore. They were looking at him differently. His work performance had nosedived. He was distracted, defensive, blaming everyone. He had been let go the previous week. The apartment lease was ending soon, and he could not afford it alone. Mason and Dean were suddenly less available. Apparently, drama was entertaining until it needed a couch to sleep on. Lena wrote, "You were good to him. What he said was cruel. The consequences are his." I read that line twice. I felt no triumph, no pity, just a clean, distant confirmation that silence had done what pleading never could. It had removed me from the system, And without me, Callum's polished little world had no one left to absorb the impact. I replied, "Thank you. I'm doing well." And for the first time, I realized I meant it. Lena's email seemed to open some invisible gate. For nearly 2 months, Callum had been angry, confused, offended, then performatively wounded. But once his job disappeared, once the apartment became too expensive, once Mason and Dean stopped treating his disaster like funny bar gossip and started backing away from the smoke, his attempts became different. Less proud, more desperate. Not more honest, just more afraid. The first attempt was nostalgia. A text from a new number arrived while I was sitting at my tiny studio desk, sketching a modification for my bike. It was a photo of us from the beach the year before, both sunburned, both laughing. I was building an absurdly elaborate sandcastle while Callum crowned me with seaweed and called me Queen of the Boring Little Kingdom. At the time, I had laughed until my stomach hurt. Seeing it now felt like looking at a beautiful room after learning the foundation underneath had been rotting for years. Under the photo, he wrote, "Remember this? I was happy with you. I've never been that happy since. I miss us." I stared at the picture for a long moment. We did look happy. I knew I had been happy that day. Maybe he had been too, in the way people enjoy warmth without respecting the fire. Then I deleted the photo, deleted the message, and blocked the number. The second attempt came 3 nights later. It was nearly midnight. I had music playing low, a half-finished cup of tea beside my laptop, and my mind buried in a design file when my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. Some instinct made me answer. "Jess," Callum gasped. He was crying. Not the controlled, theatrical kind I had heard from him after bad meetings or failed interviews. This was rawer, ragged, almost frightening. The sound still reached a place in me that remembered running to him, lowering my voice, making everything softer until he could breathe again. "Please," he said. "I'm going to be evicted. The notice came today. I lost my job. I have no one. Mason said I can't stay with him. Dean isn't answering. My mom is furious. I made a mistake. I made the biggest mistake of my life." I said nothing. He sobbed harder into the silence. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." I was scared. I was stupid. I was trying to look cool in front of them. I didn't mean it. I swear I didn't mean it. I'll do anything. Counseling. Couples therapy. I'll change. You're my person, Jess. You're my home. There it was. Home. Not because he saw me as a woman. Not because he understood what he had mocked. Because his shelter was gone. His rent was due. His emotional furniture had been removed. He missed the function of me more than the person of me. I set my pencil down. "You should call a financial advisor," I said calmly, "or a housing assistance agency. They can give you resources." The crying stopped for half a second. "What?" he whispered. "Jess, I don't need a resource. I need you." "I am not a resource," I said. Then I ended the call. The third attempt came through his mother. Carol Dawson called 2 days later from a number I recognized because she had used it for years to ask whether I could remind Callum about appointments, birthdays, bills, and every other adult responsibility he treated like weather. "Jessica, sweetheart," she said, voice syrup wrapped around steel. "We're very worried about Callum." "Mrs. Dawson. He's a passionate man. He speaks without thinking. You know that. Don't you think you've punished him enough? He needs stability right now. Be the mature woman we know you are and forgive him. This pride of yours is destroying what you had." The clarity was almost funny. Even now, even after everything, the solution was supposed to be me bending so Callum did not have to break. "I am being the woman I am," I said, "and that woman is no longer in a relationship with your son." She began to sputter, but I hung up before she could finish turning obligation into love. That night, the mask finally fell. A final text came from the number he had used during the crisis call. No tears this time, no nostalgia, no apology, just the bitter core underneath the panic. "Fine. You're just a coward who couldn't handle a man being honest. You were always boring and small anyway. I'm better off without your sad little life. Have fun pretending you're happy. For the first time since the bar, I laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly, just enough. I saved the message, not because it hurt me, but because it completed the record. He had called my life a prison, then begged to move back into it, then cursed it when the door stayed locked. That was when I understood the truth. The fate worse than death had never been marrying me. It had been me staying. 6 months to the day after I walked out of that bar, I closed on the house. It was a 1950s ranch-style fixer-upper on a quiet, tree-lined street with a detached garage bigger than my first studio apartment. The kitchen looked like it had been waiting since 1974 for someone to apologize. The floors squeaked. The garden was half jungle, half battlefield. But the bones were good. The structure was sound. It had space for a workshop, a small front porch, and enough quiet to hear myself think. It was, by every definition Callum had mocked, the beginning of a nice little life. The irony did not hurt. It simply sat there like data. The life he had called a trap was now the thing I chose freely, and choosing it without him made all the difference. I hired a contractor named Reese, a blunt man in his 60s who respected clear plans and anyone willing to swing a hammer. We started with the garage, turning it into a clean, organized workshop. The smell of fresh-cut wood became therapy. The sound of drills became music. Every shelf I built felt like a sentence in a language Callum had never bothered to learn. Work improved too. The project I had accepted after leaving him became a success, earning me a promotion and a bonus that went straight into the house fund. The motorcycle club became a regular part of my life. Liam came over on Saturdays to help with wiring and laugh at my paint samples. Soren and I went on a few group rides, then shared easy beers afterward. There was interest there, gentle and unforced, but no rush. For the first time in years, nothing in my life felt like it needed to be managed into survival. The last thread from the old life was the condo. The lease had been broken cleanly, but months later the owners decided to sell. The landlord, who had appreciated my professionalism, offered me first right of refusal. I made a fair cash offer below asking because it was simple, fast, and useful. Not sentimental, not symbolic. Just a good investment in a rising market. I planned to clean it, paint it, and sell it for a profit. The day the sold sign went up felt like the final period at the end of a chapter that had gone on too long. That afternoon, Lena Chen called me. Her voice was hesitant. "Jessica, I thought you should know. Callum heard you bought the condo. Someone from the building told him. He's saying you're trying to financially destroy him, like you did it to humiliate him." I leaned against my truck, sunlight warm on my arm. "It's just a property." "I know," Lena said softly. "But he doesn't. Be careful. The person he is now might be the person he always was. You just see it clearly." 2 days later, I was at the condo doing a final walkthrough before handing keys to the renovation crew. The rooms were empty, echoing in that strange way old homes do after everyone's belongings are gone. I was measuring the living room window when I heard a key turn in the lock. My old key. The door opened and Callum stepped inside. The polished man from the bar was gone. He looked thinner, pale, badly rested. His sweatshirt hung off him. His hair was messy. His eyes moved around the empty room, taking in the blank walls, the dust marks where furniture had once stood, the absence of us. "Jess," he said. I lowered the tape measure. "Callum." "I saw the sign." His voice cracked. "You bought it. It's an investment." He stepped farther inside like he was walking through a museum of his own consequences. "It's so empty." "Yes." His eyes filled. "I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. That night I was trying to look cool. I was insecure. I didn't mean it. Not really." I said nothing. "I lost everything," he whispered. "My job, the apartment, Mason and Dean. My mom barely speaks to me without sounding disappointed. I have nothing, Jess. Nothing." He wrapped his arms around himself. "And I know it's what I deserve. But you were my person. You were my home. This was our home. And I ruined it." The performance was different now. Less polished. More desperate. But need is not the same as love. Yes, I said calmly. You did. He flinched. And you were right. His brow twisted. What? You said you'd rather die than be trapped in that life with me. It was the truest thing you ever said. So I set you free. And in doing that, I set myself free too. He stared at me, script collapsing behind his eyes. But look at me, he whispered. I'm ruined. I glanced toward the front window, where the red sold sign was visible through the glass. That life is over, I said. It was sold. My new one has no room for you, not even as a memory I keep visiting. The color drained from his face. I hope you find what you're looking for, Callum. Truly. But do not contact me again. This is the last time we speak. I walked past him and opened the door. He did not move. He stood in the center of the empty living room, like a statue of regret in a place that no longer belonged to either of us. Jessica, he whispered. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The lock clicked softly, final and clean. I walked to my truck, started the engine, and pulled away without looking back. The past was a closed property. The road ahead was clear, open, and mine.